scared, and not having a group like Turning Point or any sort of way of having allies on campus, I said, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I don't support him, and I walked away. And oh God, guys, I'm a Trump supporter. And I was that nervous of like, oh, I didn't do that. No, thank you. And I just left because it's these men that are like standing over me, asking me if I really just reported what they did on campus. Weird. I also had a professor. The one professor I told I was conservative, Republican. The next week, he had a lesson in class for political research on stereotypes. And he said, class, what's a fair stereotype we can make about conservatives in the South? Why do they vote the way they do? And he said, okay, anybody? And I'm like, oh God, what's about to happen? And the whole class, everybody's like woke, but they're a little too nervous to show what they want to say. So like, they're ready. They would say it on Twitter, but they don't know if they should say it in real life. And so they like got their hands up like this, and he goes, yeah, you. And the person goes, well, the South is by the border, and they don't like immigrants, and there's a lot of immigrants down there. And my professor, with that, goes, yes. What's the second reason, class? That was a whole lot. What's the second reason? Because there's only two, right? And so, again, everybody's a little nervous, but a little more confident because of what my professor just pulled off. And the next person goes, race. And my professor goes, yes. All right, moving on. That was a lesson in political research. And so, you guys, people ask me all the time, should I speak up on campus, Morgan? I'm scared. Yeah, I was scared too. What am I supposed to say after that? Am I supposed to raise my hand and be like, hi, it's me, the Republican, racist, hater of immigrant person that you just identified? I would like to argue against that, against this room of people who I know do not like me. No, I don't want to do it. And people on the internet, a lot of people will say, conservatives need to stand up more on campuses. It's easy. You just got to have some guts. You guys, I get it, okay? I've been there. I did not have a backbone then, but I also didn't have Turning Point. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have campus reform. I didn't have the outlets that we do with media. And so now, what I would suggest, and this is what I wish more people would do, is because we have a lot of parents in the room, I'm sure a lot of grandparents, who want to understand what's happening in the classroom. And the only way they can help us is if they see what's going on. So turn on your laptop, turn on your phone, click the record button, and get the evidence of what is happening to you in the classroom. Send it to Campus Reform, send it to Turning Point USA, it'll go on to Fox News, or OAN, or Newsmax, and we'll get the word out. If it doesn't go onto media, if you don't feel comfortable with that, it goes into an archive where groups like Victims of Communism, who are collecting evidence of education, indoctrination about Marxism, socialism, and communism, it'll go in their archive, and then it helps them lobby to state-level policymakers who are going to help us. And I learned a nice little valuable lesson from my communist roommate. We're making breakfast one day, and we learned a lot from each other. We conversed quite a lot. But the most important lesson I learned from her is she said conservatives are mean. She used the word mean. Because, sorry. We're mean because we say we care about things, but then we don't put taxpayer dollars or government action behind the things we say we care about. And so do we really care about those things, or are we lying? And that's mean. Yes, my roommate told me that I was mean, and my other roommates agreed with her and treated me with more hostility for being a conservative than for her being a communist, because they see caring about something and caring about fixing an issue as throwing taxpayer dollars behind it, or having some big Green New Deal style government plan, or some government action that will fix the problem. That's what they see as a solution, and there's no other way to fix a problem other than government. And so that really opened my mind to us. So we need to do a better job of messaging our solutions and how we want to help people and fix the problems in this country, because there's quite a lot that the left are using to promote their socialist Marxist narrative. And so, taking that though, is every young person in America like my commie roommate? No, they're not. And unfortunately, I think too many conservatives are treating the young people in our country with the disdain as if they are full-blown commies. They are not all like my roommate. My roommate deserves whatever she's gonna get. All of the fun that we can make of her for being a communist with mass murderers and dictators on her wall, she gets that, okay? She deserves that. Any communist who actually wants to upend our country, I'll go after him. We'll go for a debate. We'll go for a little argument on social media. I don't care, okay? They're asking for it. But there's a big difference between a seize the means of production, communist, socialist, or Marxist, and the very naive, well-intentioned, and uninformed young Americans across this country who think they're helping people by supporting socialism. And I say this because a statistic right now shows 70% of young Americans would vote for a socialist. Over half of young Americans would rather have socialism than communism, or than capitalism for the future of the country. And at Young Americans Against Socialism, we primarily focus on first-hand testimony from survivors of socialist and communist countries. And we have a group chat, and these people, we have 20 involved at Yaas, they are experiencing PTSD episodes over what they see from Antifa in the streets. Because the Chavistas and the Colectivos of Venezuela were the Antifa of America. And now we are experiencing what they experienced in Venezuela, where a militant arm terrorizes innocent people into subjecting and supporting their radical movement. And the fact that first-hand testifiers are telling us that this is exactly what they experienced just a couple decades ago, and that forced them to flee their country, now they're saying, I didn't think I would have to consider even leaving America. Is this really happening? So that's it. You got DSA, Sunrise Movement, Justice Democrats, Black Lives Matter, and Antifa. They're all contributing to this movement in their own little ways. And it's important that we understand, follow, read between the lines, read their constitution, so that when young people come to us at situations like Thanksgiving dinner and tell us all about how Antifa's so great, I read about them in Teen Vogue, they're fighting against the evil racist people. And Black Lives Matter is good. My own sister said she wants to defund the police. The best thing we can do is understand these groups, read their constitutions, read their social media posts, and be aware of what they're telling our children on social media, our peers. So that's the people. Let's talk about the tactics. Got 3 tactics that these commies like to use. And I say commies because once you implement socialism, it turns into communism. We all know that. Okay. Tactic number 1. Who's read The Road to Serfdom by Hayek? Anybody? Hayek? Everybody should read it. It's very thin, just takes you maybe a couple hours, but everybody should read this. One of the tactics that Hayek talks about, this was written about a century ago, that socialists trying to come to power have to distort basic language, change the meanings of words that are used in everyday language. Think of progress. When you hear progress from a leftist, just run, just walk the other way, leave, don't give them any attention. Justice. What does it mean to seek justice for a leftist? Apparently to them, they believe it's okay to promote violence because they are supporting their livelihoods by destroying other people's property, and that property can easily be replaced. It's the justice they are seeking that is most important. I read these articles, I want to throw up. Okay, justice. But a really important word that they are also changing is freedom. What the heck is freedom? And so there's a video by Bernie Sanders that came out, Comrade Sanders. And it was when I think he was running for the primary for president. And it was called, What is Freedom? What is freedom? And it was a video of a bunch of young people. And they get on screen and it flashes from one to another. And they go, what is freedom? Freedom, 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 freedom. Am I free if I have student loan debt? Am I free if I have high healthcare costs? Am I really free? This is my favorite one. Am I really free if I only work my dead-end job to get healthcare insurance? And it went on and on and on for all of these questions where, not the most ideal situation, crappy situation, life sucks sometimes. But the video didn't say, you're still free, let's be thankful we're in America, but let's also solve those problems. The video said, no, you are not free in those situations. Freedom comes from economic freedom, and economic freedom comes from free college for all, healthcare for all, jobs for all, student loan forgiveness, the Green New Deal, XYZ, fill in the blank for all socialist program. And then it said, this is freedom. This is socialism. What they have done there is completely change the concept of freedom. flipping it to think that when you feel this false sense of security, you're free, because you don't have any responsibility or stress. Freedom is now, to our generation, rejecting the burden of being. Rejecting the fact that life sucks sometimes, that there are bills to pay, there is food to put on the table, there is a job that you probably should want to work because it's actually empowering to be able to take care of yourself. And the fact that it would be a lot easier if Bernie Sanders, who says life would be so much better and so much happier if you let me take on those burdens. And now you have Senator Ed Markey, tweeted today, this morning, I'm on my plane here, and he says, it's time to start asking, what can your government do for you? So not even ironically anymore, they are actually flipping what JFK said. The Democratic Party has just done a complete 180. Freedom is when you are not oppressed, and when you can do anything you want in life, and you have rights that are guaranteed to you by founding documents. And people can't just come and take advantage of you or exploit you without being held accountable with a system of justice. Freedom is being able to live your life. It's not the government taking over responsibility so that you feel a little bit happier and less stressed in life. Let's set that record straight. So they've changed what freedom means to our generation, and it's important for us to understand that. The second thing is Marxism. Do you guys know what Marxism is, or do you just hear it on Fox News a lot? Marxism is when you pit classes against each other. So you have the working class versus the owning class, the business owners, the CEOs, the bosses, the millionaires, the billionaires, versus all the working people who are oppressed by these evil owners. And you build up the tension, and you do it, and you divide the population for your own political gain. An example of this is in Cuba. When Fidel Castro and Che Guevara landed in Cuba the first time, they had their first fight, and they were left with like 18 people on their side, like numbers in the teens. And so they had to build up ranks, and they had to build up momentum for their movement as they got on to Havana. And what they did is they went around to farm towns, and they built up angst amongst the people. Really pitted the workers of the farms against the owners. And they said, you see those rich people over there with those farms, all that land, all that money, all that food, all the resources that you don't have? It is not fair that they have those things and you don't. What we just did is we just stole their animals, and we're giving them to you now because you deserve them. It's not fair that they have them, so we took them and gave them to you. Now join us, and it'll get even better. This is just a little taste. Join us in our movement. So they built up ranks using Marxist tactics. If we consider what I think is the most important version of Marxism in America today, I consider the student loan debt crisis. When I worked in advertising in Boston a few years ago, it was right after college, and I sat at a table. It was one of those open concept, cool hippie offices where everybody just sits at conference tables. And so I could hear everybody's conversations, and there were girls that would talk, and they'd say, you know, I pay as much in rent as I pay in student loan debt. I pay $1,000 in rent and $1,000 in student loan every month. And when I hear Bernie Sanders say stuff, like, it makes me kind of interested in politics, because I feel like there's no way out of this for me. I have $50,000 of student loan debt, $100,000 of student loan debt, and I'm getting paid $40,000 a month as an assisted media buyer at this company. And they never really were interested in politics before, but their ears perked up at the concept that someone wanted to help them out of a problem that they never saw an end in sight from. What leftists are doing when they say, you see those evil millionaires and billionaires, the evil business people on Wall Street, the CEOs who are paying their people slave wages? AOC said that a couple weeks ago. It's not fair that they have that money and you don't. It's not moral, is what AOC said. It's not moral or ethical to have over $1 billion. It's not fair, and if you have that money, you did not achieve it in moral means. They say, it's not fair they have those things that you don't have, students, so put us in power, and we're going to then tax them and pay off your student loans with it, because that's what's fair. And so they're using it with a tax, but really they're saying, give us power, we will take what those people have, because it's not fair they have it. and we'll give it to you. They have normalized the concept of forced wealth redistribution in America with the concept of student loan cancellation, specifically by taxing the 1%, is what they call it. And it's a Marxist tactic. The other concept of Marxism is cultural Marxism. It's when you divide groups not by class, but instead by race or gender or all the other things that they like to do with their identity politics crap. But that's Black Lives Matter is a great example of cultural Marxism, where now it's evil to be a white person in many situations. An example was on my campus where they wanted a segregated cafe. They are creating divisions, and thanks to identity politics, they don't have to just divide us by classes, they divide us in every way, by sexual orientation and all the things. I'm not even gonna try and list them because I can't even pronounce some of the words. Like misogynist, I had to learn how to pronounce that in college. First of all, with climate change, you guys, AOC's chief of staff, I don't know if you, did anybody know this? Raise your hand if you heard AOC's chief of staff talking about the Green New Deal, what he said. Okay, we got a couple hands. AOC's chief of staff did an interview, I think last year, and he admitted that they wrote the Green New Deal as an economic restructuring for the United States. And then later on, they were like, let's make this about climate change. They wrote the whole bill to be just another New Deal. And then they made it about climate change and the environment. And it's a little weird to me that they now tell us the world's gonna die unless we pass this economic bill. I don't really believe them, and I think it's a marketing ploy. I think they're using the classic leftist tactic of scaring people into submission. And so that's why you have children who miss class for these climate rallies, who carry signs with capitalism kills, and we need a Green New Deal, a socialist revolution to save our planet. Some really radical stuff. Then we also had coronavirus. Holy crap. Because then they didn't have to just say we're gonna die in 10 years. People were actually dying. And that made it a lot easier for them. It really did. And I was honestly surprised because I really gave them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know, I thought that they were gonna pull it off and not make this political, and wow. Instead, a couple weeks in, we already had Bill de Blasio, Commie de Blasio, who studied Latin American politics in college and then still quoted Che Guevara when he was in Miami for his presidential campaign and said, oh, I didn't know he said that. Awkward. Yes, he probably did know that because he studied Latin American politics. But this guy goes on national TV only a few weeks into coronavirus and starts telling us, this is a case for nationalization. This is why we need to nationalize our economy so we'd be more efficient in our response to pandemics for all. If we had free housing for all of these things, we would have handled this better if we were just a socialist country because the government would have been more efficient in solving it. Holy crap, I couldn't believe that I was hearing this. I was like, you guys are really actually using this as a way to push your agenda. It's fascinating. And I will just say, I really expected a little bit better of them, and that was naive of me. But this concept of them ruthlessly pushing their agenda, the left believes in the saying, the end justifies the means. They do not care who gets impacted because they believe their end goal is so moral, so righteous, so helpful for the poor people and the working class that they're okay with a few people suffering in order to make this happen. They're okay with causing a little chaos because they think their end goal is going to be the moral solution that everybody deserves. And that's that mindset we have to understand. A lot of them really think they're helping people, and that's weird. But I'll end with this. Let's talk about moving forward, okay? I think it's a two-pronged approach, proactive and reactive. We have millennials and Gen Z, 70% would vote for a socialist. That was a combination of what happened in the public education system, what we weren't taught about Marxism, socialism, communism, and capitalism. We weren't taught that all the 20th century dictators actually came to power promising progress, social justice, all the little liberal buzzwords that we like to hear in America now. Those bad men who ended up murdering people, millions, started by promising progress. We were not taught that in high school or middle school. And so now all these students in America don't have the ability for red flags to go off in their head when they hear those same promises from the leftists today in America. They don't have the intellectual ammunition to say, this sounds sketchy, this sounds wrong. On top of that, when they go onto college campuses, they don't have the intellectual ammunition from high school or middle school to fight back against Marxist professors. unless their parents taught them the truth, you cannot expect them to go into a college classroom where the Marxist professors tell them that socialism is more moral than capitalism and walk out having defended capitalism in any way, because they did not learn how to defend it in American public schools. On top of that, you have pop culture. You have Teen Vogue, a magazine that my grandma used to buy me subscriptions to when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. Teen Vogue now, the news and politics section is run by an anarcho-trans communist. What does that even mean? Anarcho-trans communist leads the news and politics section at Teen Vogue. And I found that out because maybe you guys noticed this. Teen Vogue's been putting out some crazy stuff. There's some articles. One was, Antifa is fighting the racists of America. One was, who is Karl Marx and why is he still relevant in society? Another was, here's what you need to know about the Communist Manifesto. So on, so on, so on. Another one, and this, we were talking about this earlier, it's not just the politics of it. They're focusing on internal corruption. And what socialists really believe is that to really support the collective, you can't have nuclear family. You can't have other sources of happiness in life. And so they tell you can have hookup culture. You don't need to get married. You don't have to have kids. You should just be on birth control for the rest of your life. It's okay. Here's how to have anal sex on Christmas Day, 2019. Christmas Day 2019. I sound a little conservative when I say this, but on Christmas Day last year, they posted a cartoon guide on how to have anal sex. Teen Vogue. My grandmother used to buy me those subscriptions when I was 12, 13, 14, because it had articles like, hey, here's cute nail polish colors for your skin tone. Here's where to buy a cute floral spring dress. Here's what to do when the boy kisses you that you have a crush on. Should you go on a movie date or should you go to the park? That's what it used to be. And now it's teaching you about Marx and communism and how to have weird sex. They're internally corrupting us, not just with economics. And so it's something we need to pay attention to, because an internally corrupt society doesn't have the core values that it needs to keep society moving forward in a healthy way. So that's kind of that cultural aspect from pop culture. You get it from the mainstream media and everywhere else. It's dangerous because it's not just in the classroom. It's a loss of values. It's a lack of education in the classroom. It's the indoctrination that really laments the fact in colleges across the country. And it's in the pop culture and mainstream media that we see today. So we have all of this that's added to millennials and Gen Z supporting socialism at a crazy rate. What do we do about that? I think the answer is peer rationale, first-hand testimony, communication with the people in our lives to talk about how grateful we should be, the success achieved by capitalism, the progress, justice, and equality that capitalism builds and enables us to achieve. These great things that we have from classical liberalism and capitalism in America. It's up to us to champion the messaging to millennials and Gen Z. That's the reaction, because we have to react to the fact that they were given lies, they were lied to, and now they support leftism. Being proactive, though, what the heck do we do about the fact that there's going to be a third, fourth, fifth generation of young Americans that are going to be raised to have the same values through the same system if we don't change anything? What the heck? I've talked in DC with organizations, Victims of Communism, and like I said, is collecting an archive for lobbying purposes of what's going on in the classroom, because we have to pursue some sort of education reform, state level reform. And with that, Victims of Communism is trying to do more holiday type stuff, and so at each state trying to get a national Victims of Communism Day, where on that day the state makes sure that first-hand testifiers come to classes and meet with students, answer questions about what they went through. There's little things like that, or we could go straight for it and change curriculum on history, economics, finance, business, all the good stuff that our generation should have learned and didn't learn, and now we have to catch up for it. So what do we want future Americans to be taught? I'm so excited by this concept. Like, I get all excited thinking about it, of like, what should be in American classes? Maybe if we learned about finance, we wouldn't put ourselves in such situations with the student loan crisis. We would be able to understand a monthly budget instead of understanding a monthly budget after we've graduated from college and seen our first monthly budget and go, oh God. Because that's what happened to me. Like, I listened to Dave Ramsey and stuff growing up, but I never had that personal finance lesson in school or anything. My parents did a good job, fairly, but when I finally got in my first apartment and saw what I was paying in debt versus what I was paying in rent and groceries and everything, that was like, whoa. It was my first adult moment. What if we did better finance teaching in middle school and high school and prepared our students for real life instead of just pushing them through a system? So I think reimagining education is really the way forward for this generationally. And so don't forget about Gen Z and millennials. We have to get them the truth, but let's figure out what we can do at our school boards and state level to fix what's happening about history, economics, business, and finance. I think that's the key to the future. And with that, I think President Trump hit the nail on the head, you guys. America will never be a socialist country. I really think that's the truth, but we are not immune from potentially having a socialist uprising like Venezuela and all the other countries. We can't act like freedom isn't fragile, because it really is. But we have a really great system in America of protections from radical rapid change, like the filibuster, packing the courts, or our court system, our justice system, and of course the Electoral College. Those are all three things that the socialist Democrats are trying to get rid of right now. We have to protect those. We have to keep our system strong. And I will say, I don't think we're going to become a socialist country, because I think America will stand up against this, but we have to act with vigilance and understanding that freedom is fragile. So thank you so much for having me today. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sorry I talked a lot, but I hope it was very informative. Thank you.